Everybody, it's Aaron, BWG Connect. We still, we're going to give it about 2.5 to 3 minutes as we normally do before we kick these off. As wait for people to wrap up their last meeting, grab a cup of coffee. So feel free to just kind of sit tight for the next 2.5 to 3 minutes or so. If there's specific questions along the way that you know you're going to have, you can drop them into the chat. You can drop them into the question section. Or you can email me, Aaron, AARON at bwgconnect.com. And we'll field questions those ways. But yeah, we still got about 3 minutes before we kick it off as we have some more people dialing in here. But yeah, hold tight. Hang on mute. About 2 minutes here, we'll kick it off. Still have some people dialing in. Happy Thursday, everybody. Hey, everybody, just got about got a bunch of people dialing in right now, so we're gonna give it another 1.5 to 2 minutes or so. We'll start about 3 minutes after the hour. Should be a fun call today. Everybody, thanks for joining. About a minute here, we'll kick it off. Pretty pumped for this, actually this one today, the consumer health brands, because I spent the first 17 years in healthcare.
Yeah, Perigo days.
Yeah.
Even pre-Perigo.
Yeah, and yeah, before that, I was at Pfizer doing synthetic organic chemistry. So everybody, we got about, I don't know, 1 minute here before we kick it off. Still a bunch of people dialing in. About 30 seconds here, we'll kick it off, everybody. You know, I think still have people dialing in, and we'll probably catch some more as we go here, but just in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. My name is Daren Garcia, co-founder and managing director of BWG Connect. We're a network of thousands of brands who just network and knowledge share together to stay on top of the biggest pain points, newest strategies, newest trends that are popping up across the digital landscape as a whole. We talk with about 30 or 40 brands a week individually, just in one-on-one conversations to stay on top of what those are. So if anybody ever wants to chat, more than happy to put you on one of those slots that we leave open. Always love to do a digital deep dive and pick the brains of people in the network. Also, though, if you're ever looking for any kind of service providers, we have a short list of them across the digital landscape as a whole, everything from fulfillment right now, which is huge, Amazon agencies, Amazon partners for buy and wholesale resell on Amazon, performance marketing, international expansion, Tmall, whatever it might be. Don't hesitate to reach out. Just shoot us an email, put some time on our calendar. We can give you a short list and save you a Google search and weeks and weeks of vetting out different people. All of them will come recommended by peers in your network as a whole. A couple of housekeeping items as we get rolling. If you have questions along the way, don't hesitate to submit them into the question space or the chat space on the GoToWebinar panel there. We want to get as many answered as possible. If you don't have access to that and you'd rather just email me, go ahead and do that as well, Aaron, AARON at bwgconnect.com, and we will field as many questions as we can. That being said, I think something has come up quite a bit lately, and especially we kind of carved this one out, and it's a CPG, it's a consumer healthcare space as a whole, as this huge push to digital, this huge push to online as a whole. We've seen a lot of brands, you know, in our discussions with them, you know, talking about brand control, you know, maintaining marketplace, you know, control as a whole. You know, we want to make sure that we're adhering to the brand value as a whole, but also, if you think in the pharmaceutical consumer healthcare space, you know, this is really, you know, where I played for 17 years is, you know, these are things that people are ingesting. And so it's a whole new level, especially with obligations with the FDA as a whole. And so anyways, we've got some great friends, great partners of the network over at Vorys eControl. Daren Garcia has been, you know, a good friend for quite some time now. They've agreed to jump on the call today and kind of walk through, you know, eControl strategies as a whole. You know, we kind of tailored it to the space, but I think a lot of them are applicable across multiple different categories as a whole. But just a reminder, if you have questions, drop them in, you know, the chat or the Q&A. We want to field those as we go. But, you know, Daren, I'll kick it over to you. You know, a brief intro on yourself and Vorys eControl would be awesome. And then we can kind of jump into some of the content. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, everybody, for jumping on today. I'm Daren Garcia. I'll be talking to you today. I'm a partner at Vorys eControl. Vorys eControl exists within Vorys, the law firm, which is a large law firm, offices around the country. But, you know, we're here today to talk about the unique category of eControl. And, you know, one of the things that people ask, okay, well, what is eControl? And eControl really is the process through which brands exert control over their online sales to ensure high quality distribution and brand equity. And so as a company, those are things that really, I mean, we're talking about pharmaceutical consumer health brands today, but as Aaron mentioned, regardless of which vertical you're in, this notion is either a big deal for you or soon will be as you expand your online presence and online becomes a bigger deal for your company. Vorys eControl is a unique multidisciplinary team within the Vorys firm that specializes in providing online sales control solutions to manufacturers and brands. We're multidisciplinary. We have lawyers like me, business executives that have joined us from the practitioner side, investigators, data analysts, data scientists, all focused solely and exclusively on how do our companies establish and enforce eControl within their distribution networks. So we've provided online sales control solutions for brands and manufacturers, well over 450, probably into 500 or so manufacturers and brands that we've supported on this space, including a great many within the pharmaceutical, over-the-counter, consumer health verticals. So everything that we talk about here today is going to be looked at through the lens of how do you leverage eControl to drive business value. It's not, you're going to see if you go out in this world and maybe you have unauthorized sellers, or you have map problems, or you have, you know, maybe some counterfeit or things like that, and you're going to see right away in a Google search saying, we'll take care of 80% of your unauthorized sales problem in 30 days or your money back, or we'll get rid of X number of sellers in X amount of time. And those things ultimately are commercially meaningless. Really what counts, the metrics that matter is, or are, how are you leveraging this to drive real business value? And so regardless of whatever your Amazon or e-commerce strategy is, are you lining up your control programs to move the needle in favor of your strategy? On a 1P side, is Amazon have 99+% of buy box, and are your ASPs where you want them in the channel? On the 3P side, is your storefront or your third-party seller storefront getting 95, 98, 99% of sales in the channel at your MSRP or your MAP, whatever your case may be? Are you able to leverage your control strategy as a differentiator, both in terms of quality in the online channel, stability and growth in the online channel, and being able to show your off-channel partners and the big retailers and things like that, hey, look at me online, I'm clean, I'm profitable, I'm the one that you should invest in. And so everything that we talk about here today will be looked at through that lens. And the roadmap that we're going to walk is basically to talk a bit about market trends and dynamics, talk about some particular challenges in the category at issue today, and then talk about how an eControl solution would work within the typical consumer health pharmaceutical company that's beset by some of the challenges that will flag. Please, as Aaron said, flip your questions into the question box. We'll address as many as we can at the end. We'll leave 10 minutes or so for that, so we'll have plenty of time. So market trends and dynamics, where are we? Well, the people that study this, and many of you on the phone living it, know that as marketplaces grow and advance and become more important, the speed and level at which they're disrupting retail and really all channels is unlike anything that's ever been experienced before in the history of commerce. And so, you know, many manufacturers and brands are just reeling a bit in this. Maybe they didn't pay attention for a long time, thought it was, you know, not a significant part of sales for a long time, not that important, and just something to have a team to cover off on, but focus really on the core of the business exclusively. And now, you know, when those companies are out of control and the online channel slips away from them in terms of control, it very quickly becomes the tail that wags the dog across the entire business. But we look at the category, and, you know, the growth that is settling in is coming largely from the online channel. And so, you know, this is a channel, though, that relies significantly on distribution, and as a result is primed for diversion. And when you have diversion opportunities, whether it's, you know, you're selling into two-step distribution and there's margin, whether there's any promotional activity in the retail channel, whenever there is supply, you will find very quickly people very interested in getting a hold of your products and then turning around and selling them with, you know, little to no investment whatsoever in your brand on marketplaces like Amazon, in a way that disrupts your intended go-to-market strategy, whether that's a one-piece strategy, a three-piece strategy, whatever it is. They will soon find a way to cause you a lot of problems that will in turn ripple out across your entire business. So what has been the impact of the surge of marketplaces and the surge of sellers on marketplaces? You know, they were growing in popularity, certainly, you know, really exponentially before COVID, and now have become even more important. They're placing massive pressure on historic distribution channels. I mean, you have Jeff Bezos out there basically saying that, you know, traditional distribution and the margins that everybody wants to make and all of that is just smacks of inefficiency, and something that they are out there trying to disrupt, and the whole "your margin is my opportunity" ethos is coming home to roost for many companies in the category, driven largely by unauthorized sellers, brand erosion, and the quality concerns, particularly in this category, that follow them when they appear. And so, you know, these marketplaces are such unique animals. I mean, when we first started doing this work, you know, companies still kind of viewed it like as any other typical retail channel, and didn't account for the fact that they are open platforms, have dynamic pricing algorithms. I mean, a number of the large organizations in this category will be selling 1P to Amazon and on the algorithm. Okay, they serve as the global product database, meaning that more searches start there for product than anywhere else, outpacing Google and things like that. Little to no vetting of sellers. So basically, anybody that gets a hold of your product can turn around and sell there. And really, not even withstanding the recent shifts in Amazon policy, a lack of seller transparency, meaning it's very easy for sellers to obfuscate their identity, to hide behind that, and to, you know, leverage that anonymity to feel confident in going out and selling in a way that is against the manufacturer's policies, preferences, and enforcement efforts. So, you know, all of this resulting in lost sales, and as the channel grows, the sales that are lost will grow and not be able to be ignored. Poor consumer experience. If we look at any brand that's on the phone today, if we look at your reviews, we're going to see a bunch of people complaining about the stuff was expired, the seal was broken, I got stuff in a plastic bag, it's damaged, it tastes funny, it smells funny, I got sick. And all of that being driven by and large by third-party sellers who get a hold of your product and put it up on Amazon. The stuff that they get is not stuff that you would want to be sold. People get it, they get upset, they leave their negative reviews. Many times they are product reviews that so they hang around your neck, not the seller's neck, and drag you down in terms of marketplace performance and just market reputation, leading to all of the erosion of brand value from a reputational standpoint and a pricing standpoint. And then very quickly the channel conflict settles in with the omni players or the large brick and mortar retailers beginning to complain very loudly about the disruption to their business being driven by unauthorized sales and marketplace dynamics, such that they may be threatening to pull shelf space, to not want to partner on programs, to want margin guarantees and those sorts of things. So when you lose control, the sellers show up. You'll start to see things around pricing violations because they're trying to win buy box, product quality issues because they get liquidated product or product near end of life, or something that is other than ideal. Makes it very difficult for the brands to effectively execute marketing strategies and things like that. Because if you don't have the buy box, much of your advertising and things like that isn't running. And pretty soon that's going to settle into price erosion, poor reviews, lost sales, chargebacks all of a sudden quickly follow, and mistrust from consumers when bad reviews stack up, and pretty soon the sales and margin loss and the broader business implications. So why is control hard? Why do companies need to speak to people like us to go out and fix this? And really it's three issues. Number one, online marketplace dynamics. So you have open platforms, unclear who many of these sellers are, how they're getting your product. You have, in many companies still that we speak to, you have e-commerce teams sitting on one side, traditional sales teams sitting on the next. And there's not really much collaboration or integration or alignment between the two. It's very much you do your thing, we'll do ours. And when that happens and you lay atop that traditional business practices, volume incentives into distribution, promotion in brick and mortar, buy one, get one, discounts, things like that allow for product to flow into the hands of unauthorized sellers, and you don't have effective channel controls in place, you will very quickly end up like the whiteboard here. So let's say you're a brand, you're selling out to national retail, you're selling 1P to Amazon, and you're selling into distribution. They're going down and supplying local pharmacies or retail stores or just smaller players not big enough to deal with you directly. And just for ease of dollars, let's work up $100 price here, but going out to the nationals at Amazon at 75 and 65 down to distribution to fuel the downstream resale with some incentives. Now they start overbuying to take advantage of the pricing incentives and discounts. They start laying off the extra on diverters, and there are a great many in this space. You start to see a lot of the same players, Mr. Medical, Lucky Luke, you name it, Pharma Packs. They're all out there and very active in the space. The brand all of a sudden wants to have MAP here at $100 or $10 or whatever it is, and everybody starts off playing ball. Well, pretty soon everybody just starts putting their product up on Amazon. Distributor says, hey, I move a little extra over there, I've got plenty of margin. Diverter, same thing. The local shops running the owner's kids running an Amazon store for them, so they're moving some product. Amazon starts dropping its price to keep buy box. National retailers got to match Amazon's price. It comes back to you for their money. They run their promotion. Amazon's matching that. Distributor says, I still have room to move. Diverter, same thing. Amazon says, I've got to knock them out of the buy box so I can keep it. I'm going down to 85. Consumer says, geez, I can't beat this price. I'm going to get it here. All of a sudden, they get a bad product. They return it. Impossible to tell where it's come from because it's all been commingled. And they leave their bad review. So this stuff was terrible, it tasted funny, and it was expired. And that starts getting tagged as helpful by others and starts to hurt in terms of ranking and search and those sorts of things. All the while, the battle continues between national retail and Amazon. And the one thing that's for certain is everybody's coming back and looking to you to be made whole, and threatening significant business penalties if they are not. And so this puts brands in a very difficult situation, and it is not something, and maybe crapped out on Amazon eventually, but it is not something that can be managed via map policies. It's not something that can be managed via scary letters, okay? Rather, you need, as an organization, a holistic control strategy, okay? And in this category in particular, it is a crucial reality that brands need to establish these types of, well, really to establish eControl, because otherwise you have no hope of getting from the phone on the left where you have a listing, you have a bunch of unauthorized sellers, pricing's all over the place, your brand's getting eroded, channel partners are upset, sales are being lost, negative reviews are stacking up, to the phone on the right where you have it under control. Your authorized seller, whether that's Amazon, whether that's a third party, whether that's yourself, are out there driving the majority of sales in the channel. You're able to maximize your marketing returns. Your products are sitting out there consistent with your pricing. This is what's going to allow for not only increased e-commerce sales, but better business across all channels, the elimination of channel conflict, and the protection of your brand value, brand quality, brand equity long term. The brands that get from left to right will be the ones that win, and those that stay on the left-hand side, it's just understand that market forces are lined up against you. You're going to go down, okay? Distributors are going to push you down, retailers are going to push you down, Amazon's going to push you down, and until you engage in some self-help, you will never dig out of that, okay? And there's no trick to getting out, but rather, you need to look towards the types of solutions that we'll talk about here today to get your arms around this and position yourself to be able to win. And as we get into what that solution looks like, we have to understand certain fundamental realities. Number one, marketplaces like Amazon present many single points of possible failure, meaning you have your intended commercial strategy in the channel. Okay, you have the KPIs that will be indicative of success under that strategy, whether one-piece strategy, three-piece strategy, whatever it is. But there are a number of potential points of failure that will thwart that strategy. Number one, unauthorized sellers. Number two, counterfeit issues. Number three, parallel imports. So your UK distributors pumping product into here and making some extra money on Amazon in the US. You have authorized seller policy violations, meaning people in your channels will be turning around and selling on Amazon. So authorized other than in the Amazon channel, and they're turning around and selling there, Marketplace, Walmart, wherever it is. And just to pause here for a second, I may default a lot to Amazon speak, but what we're talking about today translates across anywhere your products are sold in an unauthorized manner in a way that thwarts your strategy. It could be Amazon, could be Walmart, could be eBay, could be anything, okay? We'll kind of focus on Amazon just given its size and relevance, but all of this holds true across Walmart and other places as well. So, and then you have MAP violations or MSR, pricing violations. And if you're running, your Amazon business, there's going to be off-channel pricing issues that cause you problems, whether Amazon's chasing down Walmart, or you're running a three-piece strategy and Amazon's coming in and suppressing buy box in their channel because it's cheaper elsewhere. But what brands need to understand is that each of these issues will blow up your business strategy, A, and B, they all require different foundations, different tactics, different approaches to solve. So you have to understand your problem before you can go out and start working on a solution. I can't tell you how many companies look at something like this and say, I need a MAP policy. MAP has nothing to do with anything here other than off-channel pricing issues, okay? Meaning if your rest of your channels are a mess, Amazon's gonna chase them down, you can have MAP and try to hold everybody to your MAP pricing. But things like unauthorized sales, parallel imports, authorized seller policy, all of these things have nothing to do with MAP. Other people might say, oh, I'm going to go get some scary letter company, or my agency does quote unquote enforcement, and I'm going to start doing brand registry takedowns or things like that. Again, other than counterfeit, those things have nothing to do with the problems that you have. And so you have to understand your problem before you can begin to configure a solution. And so, this is just touching on the fact that understand that if you're dealing with unauthorized sellers, if you're dealing with channel conflict, if you're dealing with erosion, if you have upset retailers, there's no fragmented approach, excuse me, that's going to fix this for you. There's no map policy or map monitoring. There's no software. There's no tech company able to sling your unauthorized letters. You know, you can't sue your way out of it. There's just no fragmented approach that is going to work, okay? And the reason why is that, you know, you really need a holistic solution because it's a multifaceted problem. Okay, so, you know, a lot of vendors in the space, MAP, tech companies sending scary letters, traditional law firms. You know, when you think about things like MAP, which is where a lot of companies want to start, it's just fundamentally not effective because Amazon doesn't follow it, unauthorized third parties don't follow it, and nobody has to follow it. Okay, and most companies don't really want to go cut off customers. I mean, I've really yet to see a company whose strategy is, particularly in this category, strategy is we're going to go cut off Target, we're going to go cut off Walmart because they're under our price. It's just too difficult for companies to get there. Okay, baseless, scary letters to people disrupting you aren't effective because unless you have a very specific legal foundation, which we'll talk about, they're not doing anything wrong. Okay, so if some, you know, third-party seller, PharmaPacks, Mr. Medical, if any one of those is sourcing your product and selling it on the platform and you don't have the right legal foundation, they're not doing anything wrong. Okay, traditional law firms don't understand. You're going to be sitting there trying to explain what, you know, pricing algorithms are and 1P means and 3P, and they're going to say, okay, I'll talk to this seller here. Meanwhile, you've got 80 others out there, and they're flipping from Amazon to Walmart and back and forth and avoiding, you know, avoiding repercussions, and so that's just moves too fast for them. And so, you know, when we've sat down and studied this,
and Daren, I don't want to jump in because that's a place where everybody, like, so I'm talking with 30 or 40 brands a week, right? And everybody, that's their first responses. And just a reminder, as we get halfway through the call here, for those of you who have jumped on, having a great conversation with Daren Garcia, Vorys eControl on, you know, brand control across the digital landscape, focusing on Amazon just because of the size of the market and different players there. But if you have questions, drop them into the Q&A section or the chat on the GoToWebinar, and we'll get them answered as we go along. But this is interesting because every brand, when they're trying to do this, the first step they say is, hey, I've got to get a MAP policy in place. And right. That's not, yeah. And so you have a lot of brands who sit back and say, I don't want to put a MAP policy in place. I've never had MAP policy. It's not there. We don't want to do it. So it's not, that's not step one, is getting a MAP policy in place. I mean,
yeah, no, I mean, fundamentally, no, not really. And the reason why there is because it is kind of down in that second bullet point. I mean, it's okay, so you have a big Amazon 1P business, you've got a bunch of 3P sellers, and you sell to Target, Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, you know, and every other big player in the game, Kroger, whatever. And you say, okay, here's my map. And they say, well, you know, you've got 50 sellers on the platform selling your stuff. Amazon's in constant decline. They're not following it. You're crazy. I can't follow it. I'd love to, but I can't. So then the brands are like, okay, well, now what do I do? I'll go start telling these 3P sellers, hey, I've got a map. And they say, well, great. I am not subject to it. You don't even know who I am. Okay, I don't have to follow your map policy, and you're stuck. Same thing. Oh, my vendor manager will take care of me, and they know. And yeah, right. Okay. And so brands very quickly get into a posture where you just have map. You don't have any basis to control the underlying playing field. You have no prayer of a successful map program. I mean, period. You can go cut off everybody, but you won't sell anything. And so you need a lot of, I mean, I would think of map as icing on a cake, but you've got to have the cake. Otherwise, you just have a mess. So as we get into this, you know, if you're dealing with these problems, and just at a very high level, you're struggling with control on marketplaces, online sales, you have to delve into each of these buckets: strategy, foundation, enforcement, technology. Without each of these components in place, you will not solve your problem. Okay, so from a strategy perspective, I mean, you'd be surprised that so many brands gloss over this and just say, oh, okay, I need map, or I need somebody to send some letters to tell these people they're not authorized. Well, really, we've got to back up, because you don't have any basis to do that, A, and B, you go get rid of 80 sellers, you've got these 3 or 4, okay, big time players that are the ones actually disrupting you. You can go spend all that money and beat your head against the wall and not do a single thing commercially. So what is the control strategy that will work for the realities of your business that will allow you to really move KPIs that matter? Okay, great. Now we go to the foundation, because again, without the appropriate foundation, you don't have any basis to stop unauthorized sales. Okay, so some 3P sellers selling your product, you don't have the right foundation, you tell them you're not authorized, the smart ones will say, that doesn't mean anything, okay, come get me, because they know they have the upper hand. So we'll talk about that here briefly. The ability to enforce, and not just, oh, I sling a bunch of letters and tell people they're not authorized, or a bunch of MAP violation notices, but being able to drill down and say, what is it that's really causing me problems? What are the KPIs that are meaningful to my strategy? And where is the precision enforcement I need to take to move the needle in the right direction, whether it's percentage of buy box owned by Amazon, percentage of sales driven by my authorized seller, who is disrupting from a price disruptive standpoint, who do I need to take care of to alleviate my channel conflict? It's not the long tail of sellers that everybody wants to high five about out in the scary letter world, the junk mail world. It's the ones at the top that are out there, have supply, know what they're doing, and are competing, and the ones that are going to laugh at you if you try some other basis other than a true legal foundation. And then finally, you know, none of this works without technology, because you have to be effective, you have to be efficient, and you have to be able to monitor the playing field. So, I mean, just in our organization, we have obsessed over the years of bringing together the broadest suite of tools under each of these components, so that we can configure the solutions necessary to deal with a specific problem. You recall the multiple points of failure? Okay, each one of those points of failure requires a different configuration of these solution components in order to be efficient, effective, and legally compliant, which is the types of companies that are on the phone today, all are going to want to fall into that bucket. You don't want to go doing baseless things, you're going to get sued for it. So, and the common one that we see is people going and filing brand registry type takedowns and things like that, saying, you know, maybe they slip in a little must be counterfeit type thing because they won't respond to me, or some baseless trademark thing, and all of a sudden the seller's storefront gets shut down and you get sued. So don't do that. That's you know, kind of how you have to think about this. And I want to drive home this point before we start getting a bit more granular, is that internal alignment is imperative for success. This is nothing that an e-commerce team working on their own can tackle. You have to involve sales. You have to have e-commerce, obviously. If you have internal legal, you have to have them. You have to have your commercial strategy team. Who is it that's setting the overall strategy for the company? These are the key stakeholders that have to align on how are we going to get control over the online channel, and that control will spread beyond the online channel and benefit the entire business. And that's how you bring the sales team along, the broader strategy or C-suite team, to educate them and impress upon them that this will impact the entire business, both positively and negatively, depending on where we fall on the control compendium. And so, you know, we'll talk now about each kind of these elements in a bit more detail. You know, when you think about the business impact, you want to say, okay, everybody said, well, okay, yeah, I get it, but you're telling me we've got to go do all this stuff to get this under control. Is it really that big of a deal? I mean, I've sold this stuff once, I sold it in distribution, and so, you know, somebody's taken, you know, $1 million or $2 million away from me a year. Is it really that big of a deal? But you need to understand that the impact, the ripple effect of that level of unauthorized sales is going to go far beyond the initial maybe just margin differential between a distribution margin sale and an Amazon sale or a marketplace sale. And you want to start to look at what are your average selling prices below your map? How is that impacting you across all of your channels? What types of concessions, chargebacks, guarantees, et cetera, are retailers requiring? You know, you really begin to drill down into the broader metrics, and you realize that the business impact of all of this goes well beyond sales lost on Amazon, and that's important to educate key stakeholders on that. So kind of building out kind of a common type strategy that companies in this space will leverage in the US. You know, now we're going to start talking about authorized channel control. So how do you have appropriate levels of control over authorized sellers, the companies you want to do business with, or distributors, retailers that you want. So if you look at the world in two camps, to have control of your authorized sellers, you have to have the right channel policies and agreements. We'll deal with the unauthorized sellers here in a minute. And so it all starts with your marketplace strategy, because whatever your marketplace strategy is will determine the challenges and opportunities that you have in this space. Okay, so what, are you going to go up there with your entire catalog? Are you going to differentiate? Are you going to be 1P? You're going to be 3P? You know, if you think about the models, the 1P, 3P, and the types of control that you have relative to the involvement that you have, it varies dramatically. So if you sell Amazon 1P, you're going to get the benefit of a lot of sales, but you're going to pay for it in erosion if you don't have control. If you go on the 3P route, okay, maybe your 3P seller or your own storefront, you're holding your map or your desired pricing, but you're not going to sell anything if you're not able to control the channel and get rid of other 3P sellers in the game. And so again, depending on what you do here is going to drive the KPIs that are going to be most indicative of success in the channel. Okay, so kind of clear on what our Amazon strategy is. Now we have to go out to the rest of our channels and put the right policies in place. And so we have to get away from something like the left-hand side where you think you have an Amazon 1P strategy, and really your strategy is for everybody in your channel to be able to sell there, and they are. Okay, we have to get from there to the right, where we have a delineated channel map. Everybody knows their lane. Everybody knows where they're allowed to sell in an authorized manner, and you've defined your world and you've set expectations. Now, this can all be done via policy. You don't have to go out and sign agreements with these retailers. And I mean, I know very few companies in the world have that kind of leverage, brands. And so we do it via policy, or you can think about doing it via policy, basically getting to retailers, their authorized retailer policies, saying, hey, you can sell in your stores to end users. You can't turn around. You can sell on your own .coms. Don't sell on marketplaces without my permission, and adhere to some basic quality standards. So these all, you know, retailers frankly welcome these types of policies because they know that you're trying to get control of your brand. Two-step distribution channel, big deal in this category. You want to have your distributors under an authorized distributor policy or distributor agreement. That's pretty common. What's not common is companies that know that they need to reach down to that second tier. So the people buying out of distribution, we call them resellers, they need to have your policies too. So they have to be passed down, and those people told, you cannot sell my stuff on online marketplaces without my permission. Okay, so you need to get those appropriately structured. So I'm not going to belabor this in the interest of time, just so we have some time for questions if there are any, but getting this policy structure in place is critical to establishing some front-end channel controls and positioning yourself to be able to stop unauthorized sales on the back end. Now, just a quick couple words about MAP. MAP is a tool, not a strategy. We don't have anything against MAP policies. I bet that we write more MAP policies than probably anybody in the world right now. But so it's nothing against MAP, it's just of limited effectiveness. And so if you're going to do that, you want to have one that complies with the law, that covers appropriate products and advertising, and that you're willing to enforce consistently. So focus on things that are at higher price points, that are differentiating, that are innovative, that are new, and that you as a company have made the philosophical decision that our long-term brand equity in this product outweighs short-term sales of this product. Okay, so we will cut anybody off that is advertising this particular product at a level that will disrupt our brand equity. That's the fundamental decision you need to make. Know that you need to apply your consequences consistently. You don't want to play favorites. You want to avoid a menu approach where basically a MAP policy says we'll decide what we're going to do with you if you break MAP. That's kind of not a best practice. So just some high-level things around MAP to think about. Now here's something that, to Aaron's point earlier, everybody wants to start talking about MAP. We would counsel that if you don't want to back yourself into a corner on day 2 of your MAP program, you want to get control and get things cleaned up in marketplace before you go out and try to lay a MAP policy on top of it, because you will put yourself in a very difficult position with your best customers if you don't. And so just a few tidbits there. So and last piece on the authorized seller side, how you implement this, there's an art to it. How do you roll it out? How do you communicate about it? Are your sales teams appropriately trained? having them armed with the right talking points, FAQs, those sorts of things will allow for a much smoother rollout. Everybody in your channel, your good customers getting excited about this and partnering with you on it, rather than people saying, what is this? What am I supposed to do with this? You're telling me I can't do X or Y. You know, how you roll this out very thoughtfully will go a long way towards heading off anything like that. And so we'll pivot now, just in the interest of time, to unauthorized seller enforcement. Okay, so we've talked about our authorized sellers. Now we need to be able to stop unauthorized sales. Okay, and the challenge for people in this category is that some of the most sophisticated, most well-funded, most aggressive, quote unquote, 3P sellers or unauthorized sellers in the game sell your products. Okay, this is where a lot of the game started, and some of the biggest players are in this category. And so if you have problems with them, you have to have a very solid foundation. Otherwise, you know, and I don't say this, you know, it just matter of factly, they will literally throw it away, frame it in their office along with the others to laugh at, and things like that. They know what they're doing. And that is that it is legal to buy and resell product, legitimate non-counterfeit product, without repercussion in the US. Legal. Okay, the presumption is that it's fine. And so you have to dig your way out of that. You have to be able to have an applicable exception to the doctrine to be able to enforce against unauthorized sellers. Otherwise, you have no basis to enforce. I just want to be very clear about that. Saying somebody's authorized or not authorized doesn't mean anything. Saying somebody's breaking your MAP policy doesn't mean anything. Going and screwing around with Amazon brand registry is very dangerous in this space. And so how do you get around the first sale doctrine? There's really only two exceptions that apply: material differences, quality controls. You know, when you think about material differences, you have to be able to say that the products sold in your authorized channels, as you define them in the last step, are different legally than products sold by unauthorized sellers. So the typical path that companies in this category go down is they rely on a satisfaction guarantee that is limited to products purchased from authorized sellers. So you would say, if you buy my product from my authorized sellers, I will guarantee your satisfaction with it for, you know, whatever, 60 days from date of purchase. And having that differentiation will allow you to say and have a legal basis to say that the product that the unauthorized seller is selling under your ASINs or on your listings, wherever they are, is different. Therefore, they can't trade under your name. Therefore, you have a basis to enforce against them. Okay, so that's one. The other is the quality control exception. And this is big in this category. You can say, as a manufacturer, that you have certain quality standards that your sellers have to adhere to. And if they move beyond that, if they move outside of that, if they interfere with that, the products that unauthorized seller is selling can be deemed to be non-genuine. And so when you think about e-commerce, it really does call for heightened quality controls, particularly in this category. You have no vetting of sellers on marketplaces. You've got a ton of counterfeit and poor quality stuff out there. You have relative anonymity in the seller community. The marketplace design itself is confusing. People don't know that they're not buying from Amazon, that they're not buying from the brand, that they're not buying from Walmart, that they're not buying from the brand, that they're buying from some third party. Okay, and when they get bad product, they blame the brand. And so as a brand, you can't have that. And so you've got to step in and have the appropriate quality control program, both online and offline, in the marketplace channel, doing things like saying, you must, if you want to sell my product, okay, maybe only Amazon sells my product, okay, and they get all their inventory from me, and I have the ability to fully access all of my data. I have the ability to maintain a relationship with them, to communicate with them in the event of any issues, recalls, all of those sorts of things. And when you unauthorized sellers step up and sell my stuff, I don't know that you're opting out of commingling of inventory. I don't know that you're appropriately out of any return programs. I don't know if you've inappropriately repackaged my stuff. I don't know if it's expired. I don't know how, you know, where in the life cycle of my product you've got it. I can't get to you in the event of a recall, and I can't take that risk as a brand. So I'm going to say you're outside of my quality control program, and now I have another basis to enforce. But if you can't put yourself in one of those two camps, just understand that you do not have a basis to enforce against unauthorized sellers. You can try to scare them, but that's going to put you in vanity metric land, because you're going to want to, you know, high five that you got rid of X percentage of sellers, but not the ones that matter to actually improving your commercial outcomes. And so, you know, when you have the foundation then and you're ready to go, you can actually begin a true cleanup of the marketplace. And so, you know, we call it 360 enforcement, and you need to come at it from both sides. You have to be able to monitor sellers. Everybody knows that. You have to be able, though, to prioritize them. Who is actually getting sales? What are the volumes and revenues that they're driving? Where are they on my hero SKUs, on my key products? Who has those? Where do I want to focus my effort to get the most commercial lift? Because budgets and time frames are just inherently limited. So you've got to be very precise and very surgical with your enforcement. Having the legal basis to enforce is going to be critical to driving any long-term success. And people always say, well, how long does it take? And my answer is, I don't really know, because we're going to learn, okay, what the issue is. It's this particular distributor. It's this particular promotional practice. It's this international importation. This is really where the 80% of your problem is coming from. Do you want to take steps to mitigate that? Okay, or are the commercial realities involved in those causes too significant that you can't tamper with them? And so you just know that in order to hold ground and improve your position, you're just going to have to be enforcing aggressively as a cost of doing business. And that's just a philosophical decision companies need to make. But you know, you have to do something. Otherwise, again, all of the forces at issue will just drive you down. And so, you know, when we're doing enforcement, for example, we typically follow a graduated enforcement process, finding the sellers, identifying them. We work really hard to identify diversion sources, not just to know that this seller on Amazon Marketplace or Walmart Marketplace is Daren Garcia in Cincinnati, but you know, we love to pull in wherever we can data from our clients' sales data, point of sale data, those sorts of things, and be able to understand, okay, Daren's 123 is Daren, but where is he likely getting his product from? And really begin to break up those diversion rings, those clusters, so that companies are armed with the ability to mitigate this stuff on the front end, so that you're not constantly having to enforce on the back end. You know, we always have the ability, if somebody doesn't listen, if somebody doesn't go away, because you have the right legal foundation, to escalate to a very formal legal cease and desist, draft complaints, and even lawsuits wherever that's needed. It's typically relatively rare, but you know, we've done it more than anybody in the world and been very successful with it. And so if that is needed, if there are sellers or a seller out there that is just killing your strategy online because of what they're doing, you have the right foundation. You can go out and effectively pursue them in court if they don't listen to other efforts. And so again, all of this is just critically driven by data, and it's not who's breaking your map. It's not, you know, who's out there with something that, you know, estimates inventory or things like that, but it is what is everybody selling your product, and what are the volumes and revenues that they're driving, because that will tell you who is interfering with your strategy and who you need to enforce against and stop, whether you need to cut off their source or enforce directly against them leveraging your legal foundation. That's what's going to improve. So if you look at this brand, I mean, this is just an actual brand's data. It's a little bit of an eye exam, but you know, mocked up from the monitoring tool. And so they had their authorized seller in there in the second spot, only getting 24% of the sales. So when that happens, that is just deadly in terms of A, sales and growth, but B, stability, brand equity, brand value, okay, ASPs. That's not a winning position. And so we have to understand, how do we get them from 24 to 95% of sales? Because that's where they're going to get the benefit of stability and growth in the Amazon or online channel, and be able to leverage that offline to do better business offline. And so, you know, here they've got a major problem up there in the unauthorized seller that's doing $440-some thousand a month in revenue. And now that level of seller, you go and send them some message on Amazon messaging saying, hey, you're not authorized. Like, you know, you don't have a prayer of moving them out. And so you have to, again, step back, take that solution-based approach, and position yourself to be able to move the needle here commercially. So, it's very important for brands to understand too that, when you identify sellers, you figure out who they are, you're going to have authorized sellers, okay, whether they're violating MAP or your policies, and that's just policy enforcement that you as a brand have the business to business ability to take care of. But then you also have the unauthorized side of the house that you're going to have to leverage that legal foundation to handle, okay? And so it's the combination of those two work streams, all driven by data and what is most disruptive to your strategy, that's going to allow you to ultimately win. And just a word about diversion diagnostics, because it's a big deal in this category. We worked just hard over the last couple of years to bring together a very sophisticated data-driven, we call it diversion diagnostics and root cause mitigation, but basically figuring out where in your channel are the leaks, where is this stuff coming from, using our ability to analyze sales data. We have a very sophisticated data analytics team that specializes in looking at sales data relative to what's online and who's selling it there, and determine where those leaks are so that brands can take actions to shut those down. Leveraging, a lot of times these resellers will just say, hey, I get this from this distributor. It's all legit product, and they think that saves them, but obviously with the right legal foundation, it doesn't. And so this is a big deal again, because many companies want to understand where the leaks are in the proverbial boat. I mean, they don't just want to sit there and be furiously bailing water all the time, but they want to say, okay, what are we doing here that is causing this issue? And then we can get into actually fixing it with you. So these are just some typical root causes. But, and then lastly, you want to make sure that you're doing all of this in a compliant way. Okay, you want to make sure you're complying with all competition laws. You want to make sure your enforcement bases are legitimate and you don't get yourselves into trouble. And I'm just kind of quickly close out here to leave time for some questions, but keys to success at a very high level: corporate buy-in and support, setting the right KPIs. Okay, so what is actually meaningfully going to improve your business, both online and offline, and then stay committed to the strategy. There's no magic pill. There's no magic trick. You're just going to have to implement the strategy and stay committed to it. You can see improvement very, very quickly, but you have to see it through. And so that's how you get to this type of picture when you reach for your phone and your sales teams are there in the retailers and calling on buyers and saying, look at us online, we're in good shape. And so you want to think about this in a three-step process: strategy, foundation, enforcement. If we ever talk again, you're going to hear us very deliberately hitting on this. You have to have your strategy that has to connect all the dots and configure the right solution for your particular problem. Get the foundation in place so you actually do something about it, and then go out and be able to efficiently, effectively enforce to preserve and protect what you're trying to do, and then derive all the business benefits in terms of the growth, brand stability, and those sorts of things. So thank you for letting me walk you through all of that. I'll pause here and take any questions in our remaining time, or you guys can get some time back.
Yeah, so really quick question comes in. What do you do when large distributors are at the foundation of your business leak to unauthorized sellers?
I think that there are, and I know the channel, and I know how important they are, and I know that they're very large, very sophisticated companies out there. And so, I think that really companies have two approaches. In this category, a lot of the distributors are relatively friendly to this concept. I mean, they understand, they know it benefits them, they will generally play ball. And so if some brands are just so afraid to even go to their distributors and ask anything, or want to talk about anything with them, that might put some quote unquote burden on the distributor. And in that case, if you're in that philosophically, you just are going to have to enforce like heck on the back end, and that's just going to be a cost of doing business for you. Other brands say, you know what, I don't want to kind of go and kind of be in their face about it, but I'm going to work my pricing, my promotion, my incentives, my discounts, my what is my trade stack essentially, and I'm going to really try to mitigate opportunity for downstream resellers. I mean, we have a channel management executive that ran global pricing strategy for a large brand that was heavily distributed through Twostep Distribution, and so can work through a lot of tactics there. And then, lastly, when you have a distributor that says, hey, I will, play ball with you, I will help you with a do not sell list, I will help you to, I'll work with you on that. It might be pay to play, or they might just do it, but you want to take full advantage of that wherever you can. I mean, so you're going to fall into one of those couple of buckets, and there's sometimes distributors are afraid to provide sell-through data and things like that, so you don't go direct with their customers if you're not getting that data already. And we've actually been successful in negotiating with the distributors to say, hey, the brand doesn't want to see it, they don't need to see it, we'll look at it sort of eControl eyes only, and then feed you the information, distributor, about who it is in your network that's causing these problems, and then we can all kind of work together to solve it without you having to kind of open up your books and show you the brand, all of your customers, out of, and avoiding the fear that you're going to go direct.
Awesome. So what about what's there specific challenges that you see in the health and personal care space, the OTC pharma space as a whole, that are different, that people need to be thinking about?
Yeah, I think I wanted to touch on, I think I said it earlier, is that there are big time seller players in this category. Okay, so a lot of the other various categories we work in, you don't have the size and sophistication of reseller. And so if you do not have a very strong foundation, you will never dislodge some of the most disruptive players out there. And you might even kind of get held hostage by them, where they say, look, we'll stop diverting your product and disrupting if you go direct with us and allow us to become your authorized seller. I mean, resellers in this category are kind of extracting those types of benefits from brands. So I would say that the quote unquote the enemy, or the other side in this category, is big and knowledgeable and knows when they need to stand down or are at risk and when they're not. And so I just think that you're up against a worthwhile enemy, A, and B, the fact that you're so reliant on distribution and that's such a core part of the business. And there's also all the major retail players involved, that Amazon is very interested in what they're doing, how they're pricing product. You just have a very multi-headed beast. But I just think that the theme, though, that brands just have to embrace is that if you don't want these things to happen to you, okay, or to stop happening to you, you have to take action.
Awesome. And I see we're right at time here. So others, you have follow-up questions, more than happy to connect you with Daren and the team at eControl. Just all around, fantastic people helping tons and tons of brands out in the space. And have a lot of experience in the OTC pharma space as well. So I'd encourage anybody have a follow-up conversation. More than happy to put you in touch with them. Also, if you're looking for any other types of service providers, don't hesitate to reach out. Amazon, direct-to-consumer, performance marketing, international expansion, logistics, whatever it might be. We've got a short list that we're more than happy to share. All come from peers in the network as a whole. With that being said, I think we're going to wrap it up right on time. Give everybody a chance to get on to their next meeting without being late. But thanks again, Daren, for your time today. Thanks for just all the information that you shared. Once again, encourage anybody, if you have follow-up questions, more than happy to put you in touch with the eControl team. Thanks again for a great call. Thanks for the questions that came in, and hope everybody has a wonderful Thursday, fantastic weekend, and look forward to having you on a future event. Take care, everybody. Alrighty, thanks again. Thanks, Daren. We'll see you, my friend.